Present.
Mr. Atkins.
Here.
Miss Dr. Fields.
Here.
Mr. Garcia.
Here.
Miss Davis.
Here.
Ms. Robinson. Present. Mr. Linscomb.
Here.
Mr. Cartinas.
Here.
Ms.
Rodriguez.
Ms. Ernest Clark. Here. Ms. Rodriguez. Mr. LaFoyle.
I'm the anchor.
All right, I'm Renee Michelle, and I'm here. Let us begin. Dr. Wall.
Yes. Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming to our first budget workshop. We really started to plan for next year in so many areas. And I don't know if we'll be sharing any information that's completely new, because I think that before Mr. Elizondo left, he kind of shared where we were, so it won't be completely new. So we have a lot of information that we do want to share, but ultimately get some direction from the board and get some guidance in regards to things that you might want us to look into. We don't provide all the information. But a couple of things that I'm going to ask you to remember, okay, that I think is important. Everything that we talk about, we want to do through attrition, okay? So that's very important for us because we understand we're the livelihood for a lot of our employees, and that's a responsibility that we all take very seriously. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we're financially sound for our district, so that's important. There's no proposals to cut anything. We're not planning on cutting anything, maybe doing things a little bit differently, but certainly not cutting something. So I think that everybody's heard the phrase that if you do the same thing over and over, you'll probably get the exact same result. And I know that each and every one of us at the table here, we want the very best for our district. So when we make these decisions and the things we'll talk about today, it's gonna be tough, but I know we'll get through it as a team. And so, we've been, good morning. Good morning. No, you're fine. So we've been spending some time looking at different pieces of data and looking at some of the current ways that we're doing business right now. And then we have a few suggestions, and then we'd also want to have the opportunity to hear from the board in regards to how we can move forward for the best for our district. So I'm going to let Mr. Atkins start the presentation, and we're just going to be here together, and he's not going to present for the podium, and we're just going to work this out.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. We'll talk about the board goals, a couple of the goals that deal with our budget. We'll look at what we're doing as far as the budget steps, kind of a timeline. We'll look at our current budget and where we're at. Then we'll kind of do a 1920 budget outlook, look at some of the things that have currently already been done. And then some of the things that we might be able to change. We'll look at a basic school model, and then we'll look at some information on a tax ratification election. And so with that, when we look at our board goals, there's two of them that do with the financial health of the district. The goal number 2 is to spend money wisely, efficiently, and equitably, maintaining a superior rating, earning the unqualified opinion letter on our audits, and maintaining a fund balance that is aligned with board policy. And goal number 4 is to maintain a competitive compensation package with other districts that leads to increased employee retention and job satisfaction. And kind of like the video shows, if we continue to do the same things we've done, we probably won't be able to accomplish those two goals. So kind of the budget steps, we started in December, came in, started kind of looking at data, where we were at, visiting with Mr. Elizondo, estimating kind of our revenue based on some estimated tax values and our ADA information. We reviewed the existing staffing and looked at some recommendations. In January, we would like to finalize some of the staffing recommendations for senior staff. That hasn't been done, but we're kind of behind. We were starting to work on campus allotments based on our snapshot data, because those campus budgets are based on a per pupil amount, and developing a funding source, an estimate for all-day pre-K. That's a program that we're going to implement next year, and so we have been able to fund all-day pre-K through the use of some of our Title I funds. Today, we are at February, and we're doing the first budget workshop with the board. We have another one there if we need it. And then we would like to finalize staffing by the end of February and actually have staffing meetings with our campuses at the end of February and the beginning of March so that they can start planning. Then we would provide them their budget allotments for the campuses and departments. We would meet with those campuses and departments, hold those meetings, and see if we could help them. We'll try and obtain some preliminary Bear County appraisal values at the end of March. In April, we'll refine our revenue estimates once we get our 85% certified values from the appraisal district. We will budget payroll, probably have another workshop with the board. In May, we'll finalize those revenue estimates, finalize payroll based on a staffing model, finalize our campus and department budgets, have another workshop with the board, and then in June, we'll finalize the budget, hold a hearing on the budget, and adopt the budget and a tax rate. And feel free to stop and ask questions or comments anytime. So when we look at our current budget, this is where our current budget is. We adopted a budget with a revenue of $187 million. We currently, when we adopted the budget, the expenditures were about $199 million, but we've, with the retention incentive and the chillers, it's now about $200 million is what our budget is regarding expenditures. Year to date, you can see we are right on target. We're about halfway through the year. We've got about 50% of our revenues in. This is tax season, so that will jump greatly. And then our expenditures are right about where they should be for this time of the year. But it does look like we will spend close to that $200 million. So we will have to go into fund balance. Right. So when we kind of look at the budget, want to just break it down. Where does our money really go? And so we have really 5 big categories. We have actually 6 big categories. We have payroll, which is our salaries and benefits, and then we have contracted services. And in our contracted services, sometimes these titles don't really tell the whole story, so I tried to break it down. And so in contracted services, we have our legal fees, some audit, tax collection costs, professional services, some Region 20 services that we contract for. The big one is utilities. People don't really realize that utilities is there, but it's a contracted service. Then some contracted repairs, rentals and leases, which is mainly our copiers throughout the district. And then we have some miscellaneous contracted services, and that kind of is about $16 million of our budget. Then we go to supplies, and in supplies we have fuel, we have repair parts, we have reading materials, and then general supplies of about $5.5 million, and that's really campus and department budgets or make up the big part of that. And so kind of remember that $5.5 million, because we'll kind of talk about that in a minute. Then we have travel and miscellaneous, and people always wonder, there's a lot of money in travel and miscellaneous, but the other thing that's in there that people don't realize is our insurance. We have $1 million worth of insurance, and it comes out of that category. That's where TEA says that we charge that. And then we have some transportation charges, and this is charges for field trips throughout the district. We have a maintenance tax note due that comes out of the M&O. This was to purchase some buses a few years ago, and so we have 2 more payments on that, and so that should be gone in 2022. And then we have some capital expenditures, which this year is kind of the chillers and some, we have some police cars, some of those things that are purchased throughout the district. And so that's kind of the breakdown of our budget. So if we looked at a kind of a general household budget, this is kind of what it looked like. And so they had revenue of about $5,000. And usually in a household budget, usually housing is the biggest expense. So about 40% is what the recommendation is you spend on housing, and so that's what you see here, $2,000. And you have food, childcare, medical, transportation, utilities, other expenses. And so, like most households probably, they live check to check, and so they don't have anything over, but it's balanced, so they have a net position of 0. And so that's kind of how districts are. We kind of live year to year, and not a lot of extra. But what would happen if the rent or the mortgage went up to 90% of your revenue? And so that's the next page. And you can see that I raised that expense to 90%. And when we look down at the net position, we can't make our budget. And so what are some things we could do to make that come back? I mean, maybe go get a second job. Maybe get a smaller house. So, I mean, we would have to make some adjustments. We couldn't live like that. So when we look at the next page, this is kind of where we are at Judson ISD. Our largest expense, and any largest expense in a school organization, is going to be their payroll. And our payroll is 91% of our revenues. We have $170 million in payroll, and our revenues are $187 million. Typically, you see that as a percentage of expenditures. But if we don't have a balanced budget, or spending less than our revenues, it doesn't make sense to look at it that way. We have to look at it as a percentage of our revenues, because that's what we have to spend. And so I labeled this slide discretionary because the other items on here are some things that we might be able to make some adjustments on and tweaks, but really we can't operate without them, kind of like in the household budget. You know, you're going to pay utilities if you're going to have a house. You know, you got to have food, you got to have medical, you got to have insurance. So you got to have those things. And school districts really no different. And so we have some legal fees that we pay, and I know Dr. Ball has been working very hard to keep those down, of about $300,000. We have an audit that's required every year. We have our legal fees and tax collections. We have to pay that in order to collect our taxes. Bexar County gets that. We have some contracts with Region 20 that we pay, utilities, and I know we could, you know, we can put solar panels, or we can do all kinds of things, and really we've really done good. When I look at the last 3 years, our energy managers have really done a good job, because this number has not gone up but maybe a couple $100,000, and we've opened 3 new schools. And I'm sure utility rates have gone up, if I'm betting. And so I think we've done a pretty good job. We have fuel, again, that's kind of goes up and down, but it's not going to vary a whole lot. Insurance, and we have a maintenance tax note payment. And so right now, when we're sitting at our budget, this is where we're at in 18-19, we have about $6.5 million left after we have those non-discretionary things. Now remember what general supplies was? $5.5 million. So we can barely cover general supplies, let alone all the other things that we have in campus and department budgets. So we have to make a change. We have to make a change. And I know it's tough. These are never tough discussions. The other thing that kind of complicates the issue is when we start looking at our ADA and our enrollment. ADA is the #1 driver of revenue in the formula for funding today. The last 4 years, we have averaged a 1% decline each year. I don't see that stopping. I think at the next board meeting, we have 7 new charter schools that have notified us that they're opening. And I don't see that stopping. I know we've been adding houses, but we're still losing kids.
meeting, their city council meeting, Mr. Hartman shared that that is where the new idea school will be opening up right in the middle of his subdivision.
That's what's happening. We are getting no help from the people out there at all, especially the buildings, because they suggest, other than putting an idea school up. Every idea school takes, I don't know how many students away. But we've got to do something to make ourselves more friendly to the people out there, so they'll bring their children to our school, not to the idea.
Let me ask you, what were the last enrollment projections? I mean, obviously this year began, so our enrollment, where did it end up? Was it similar to the previous year, or do we see a decrease or an increase in student enrollment?
This year, we decreased.
How much?
Approximately, enrollment-wise, about, somebody help me add here,
Yeah, I'd like to know.
400 or 500?
500, so we're at 21,500. I thought we were at 22,000 last year. I guess I would just like to know the exact number of that enrollment. So you're estimating
Go
five?
ahead and turn to that page.
Next page? Oh.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Which page?
And it'll say enrollment trends.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm
that's the-
sorry.
It's
I
all right.
apologize.
No, I'm behind, so I apologize for being late.
So, right there, Jose.
It should be a line chart there.
Okay.
That's
Now
our,
look at
I
those
the
are
see.
last
history. Yes, sir.
column.
Gotcha.
It was, like you said, 22,600.
Okay.
Right. Yeah,
Okay,
these
so-
were the numbers we turned in October, our snapshot data here.
And do we continuously monitor our enrollment? Are we still sitting then at the current student total, or have we seen an influx of students come into the district?
No.
No? Okay. And then what are we projecting when we will open up Worthing Oaks? Are we just transferring students?
We're
or
just
there's no new
transferring students. Yes, sir.
Okay.
We're just transferring students.
Oh, good. Thank you.
But like the trend has been down. And typically, I mean, unless you're in a really fast growth district, you typically see after the second semester, you see a decrease because you have some mid-year graduations, you know, students leaving early and those kind of things. And so you'll see some of that. But the other thing we are doing is I guess, we have increasing values. And with increasing values, we lose some state funding. We no longer get any state funding on our debt service because our values are too much. And so looking at 2020 fiscal year, if that 1% trend continues, we lose an additional $6 million in funding.
And I think that that's part of what the community doesn't understand. They see their tax values go up, and then they don't understand. So we are I'll use that word, we're penalized when that happens by the state. And sometimes that isn't known by everybody.
One thing we need to do is, I'm looking at how many kids we've got enrolled and how many kids are showing up to school.
And when I look at that, we're pretty consistent around 94 to 95% in attendance. And you could probably increase that a little bit, but I mean, the flu season happens. I mean, there's some things
And
that
we get
happen.
hit hard with that right now.
And so, you know, it would be very hard to get above probably 96 or 97%.
Dr. Ball, this obviously, I know that we've talked about it before in the past, but having sort of a satisfaction survey. We see dips in enrollment. We're trying to say, hey, charter schools or whatever the other competitive forces might be, but a bona fide parent survey throughout the district to measure satisfaction with their experience in the district will help us then quantify and say, hey, this is why they're leaving. They're putting it right here. We need to do that.
And
I
we
think
are.
I think you talked about it.
Yes,
So
we are.
when is that going to be done?
In late April.
In late April.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
We-
But,
We did it before, and it was just ill-timed, and it was
Yeah,
after
it
the
wasn't the
fact.
right time.
So I
do you remember
like.
when you did it?
Yeah, in
It was
June.
in the-
Oh.
Yeah, it was at the end of the year, and it was a
Yeah,
done deal.
Yeah, everybody was done.
So an April survey is good, and, okay.
But I think that I'm gonna, share what I think the biggest thing is, honestly, is customer service.
Okay.
And I don't want to get into that because that is a whole other meeting that it could take us several hours.
Sure.
But it is customer service. So another time I can certainly address that. And I think that probably here, even within our own board members, people could share lack of customer
Right.
service issues. But anyways, go ahead, Bill, sorry.
So the next chart is just kind of our historical taxable values, and they've been increasing the last 4 years, an average of 8.7%. And you know, there's talk in the legislature of capping that for funding. So it's going to be an interesting year dealing with this and seeing what the legislature friends do for us. So if that trend continues, instead of 91%, our payroll, if we don't change, is going to be 94% of our revenues. And it, yes, sir.
And aren't we within the 8%? Is that typically where we want to
I
be?
would love to be at 80%, yes, sir.
But 94% just sounds so extreme. Where were we last year, when we passed this budget?
We were
Was
at
it a 94% budget?
91%.
91.
Last year? I don't, okay. I would've-
Now again, I'm doing this as a percentage of our revenues. If you did it as a percentage of our expenditures, we were at about 83%.
And
But
that's what when we're given budget reports, that's
Right.
the percentage that we're given. So that, I don't remember a 94% high.
right, but I see no need to do a percent of expenditures when we don't have a balanced budget. I mean, we have to live within the money we have, and so when we look at that, we are at 91% of our expenditures this year and potentially 94 next year. And if that happened, we wouldn't even be able to fund the non-discretionary items in our budget.
I guess the only thing that keeps going back in my mind, apples to apples type of an evaluation. I'm accustomed to seeing the expenditure where we're seeing 83% because I'm able to compare year over year what that looks like.
Right.
This is a different approach. At least I've never seen it presented this way, which is fine. But I'd like to know where we were same spot last year. And did we have a 94 percentile, or was it 92 or 91? Just for the sake of understanding where the trends are. And unless this, well, I don't know if this has that.
If you go back a couple of charts, I think that's where we are in the 18-19 year. The other pie chart is about 3 pages back.
It says discretionary on it?
Yes.
Okay.
Our revenue is 187 million. Our expenditures are over 200 million this year. But that 170 divided by the 187 gives us the 90.8%, 91% of our revenue is payroll.
So a 2017, 2018 comparison would look like?
I don't have those numbers.
That's what I'd like. When I
Okay.
look at something, I want to see some sort of a track. I want to
Okay.
know where we were last year. And I'm under the impression we were between the 79 and 83 percentile, but if we're going to expenses, you're presenting it in this manner. And I
Yes,
just
sir.
would like to know if the sky is falling and we've gone up 10%, or we were the same place last year, just for perspective.
Sure.
And I don't have that right now, so.
I can provide that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So the next page just looks at our fund balance, and at the end of the year, or the beginning of this year, we had about a $55.4 million unassigned fund balance. And, you know, it's not assigned. Our actual fund balance was about 76, but we have some insurance proceeds in there that we're going to be used to fix roofs and do those kind of things. So we adopted a deficit budget of about 11.3 million. And then we've had some budget amendments through the year, mainly the intention recentive and the chillers. So right now, our estimated unassigned fund balance at the end of this fiscal year in June would be $43.2 million. And if we don't change anything, and we have to go into fund balance 18 for this upcoming year, then very quickly we become financially in a bad position. So some of the things the district has done, and they have done I think a good job of trying to do what we can. I think we've cut department budgets this past year and campus budgets. We have a limitation on travel that we've put in place. We have frozen positions as people have left. and not filled those positions. And then there were some positions that weren't filled in the budget, and that can save us about $900,000 next year if we don't fill those. Senior staff has looked at their departments because we feel it's important that if we're going to do this, we have to look at ourselves first. And we have identified about $1.3 million in positions that if those people left through attrition, we're not talking about anybody losing their job, that we would have to look at doing things different in our departments, but we understand that that's where we're at, and so we've identified those positions. And so if people left, that's what we would do. I think Mr. Garcia in Human Resources has already experienced that by not replacing Ms. Cameron. Yes, Ms. Adams and Ms. Rodriguez. And so he's reorganized. We've taken on some duties, and we just kind of work together to try and make that happen. So that's kind of what we've done. Looking forward, we worked with the principals and all of the leaders in the district and did an exercise, and I think we're going to present those results. And I know Dr. Ball also did this with the ESAC committee.
Yes.
And so we thought it would be a good exercise for maybe us to do here after we kind of had this information.
Perfect.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, I'm going to share, and then if I forget, I just want senior staff to remind me. I have told senior staff that it is A-okay for them to participate with us.
Okay.
And to talk. So I want them to feel comfortable too. So I want to go back to the page where Mr. Atkins mentioned about senior staff and some of those positions. So when I first got here, the first person that left was Joe Gonzalez. So kind of just a little bit of reminders. So if I forget, guys, so Joe Gonzalez's duties were kind of separated between lots of people. Dr. Fields probably taking on, the brunt of it, but Joe Gonzalez was one of them. Then in the area of HR, then we did have Ms. Adams leave, but first, before that, it was Monica Rodriguez, and she went to a campus. And then Ceci also had the PD person that left, and we absorbed all those duties when we had Dr. De La Peña also put her at a campus. Trying to remember Miss Grady.
Ms. Roddy.
Grady and Roddy. So they've all had to distribute those duties. Then back, even before I got here, there was another person in the area of PR, and her name was Marissa Ferris. Yes, so when she left, again, duties were just absorbed. Everybody has gotten something, even in the area of CTE. If you remember, when the secretary left, we didn't replace that and change the position. Trying to see if I left out.
I think we,
Ms. Vera.
we had a payroll clerk.
We had a
that did not
payroll
replace.
clerk. So there's been various positions that we just have not filled. So wanted just to remind everybody that through attrition, we.
And that's the $900,000.
No, ma'am, that 900,000 does not include all of those positions.
So, right. So
We've
right now-
actually frozen some more.
Right. So right now, what has happened is, as different individuals have left, even at campuses, I have asked them to do something different. If they can do without the position, to do without the position. If they really need the position, okay, we might, hire. We've just evaluated every single position. And then also, maybe on some of them, done with a substitute in some areas. So really just looking at all the positions and seeing, okay, how can we start to work differently and work smarter? So just wanted to remind everybody about some of the positions here.
Dr. Ball, if I may.
Yes.
Right now, since Dr. Ball arrived in July, we are at approximately 20 positions at the ERC that we have not filled, including some of the ones, yes.
Now, all these positions that were described here, are they all out of maintenance and operations? Are they title dollars? Are they comp ed? Where are they? what does that look like?
It's a mix.
So it is a mixture?
It is a mixture, yes, sir.
It is a mixture. So we've also reclassified lots of positions that were local that we could truly put into some type of categorical funding. So that would help us, because what we need the help with, of course, as you know, is the local.
Yeah, I know, like with Ms. Bear, we have Ms. Robinson, and that's sort of when we talked about salary, that's who's taking that position. So it really wasn't cut. It was cut, but, we're still expending those dollars for that role. And so then, of course, if there's actual title or state comp ed, it's a whole different bucket. But I understand what you're doing in terms of not filling the positions, but they're just different budgets. And so we have to look at it differently, too.
Yes.
So I guess to get a more precise figure on what those cuts look like. Because my biggest concern is I understand we cannot hire, we have to freeze, we're in a tough spot. But when we overburden a staffer with additional responsibilities, we lose that talent. Because they go somewhere else because they're going to make more money or get less responsibilities for what we're doing. And it creates, again, this avalanche of things that just won't be productive for our district. So I know that's a constant struggle. It's not an easy solution, but it just concerns me. So understanding where the money is leaving us and finding out what we're doing. Because if it's title money or state comp ed money, what are we then doing with it? Because we always have extra money on title. I mean, the last few years I've asked about our expenses in title, and it's not spent at the end of the year.
This year, I can tell you that the team has done an excellent job. There will be no extra money. We've had, one-on-one conversations with principals that I've sent the team out, and they've gone with principals and met. A lot of times it's just not knowing how to spend it, but giving them ideas, suggestions. So yeah, there won't be any extra in title this year. They've done an awesome job with that.
Okay. Well,
But I'll let anybody else ask a question unless we're ready for my exercise.
Well, I don't have a question.
Okay,
but,
sure.
I just have a comment.
Sure.
In reference to what you're saying. I agree with you. And so then, I think it falls back on us, the board, with Dr. Ball, to come up with ways to reward our staff, to reward our teachers, people see what's going on. They know. I mean, we're transparent. There's no money, there's no money. There's nothing we can do about it. And we're not the only school district in that position. Okay? So we have to come up with ways to reward them and, make them want to stay. I was talking to some young people that are ranged in age from like 22 to 32. And just ironically, they started talking about school and their experience, in the district. And I thought about it, and I was like looking at my yearbooks, and I was showing them some things, which is how the conversation came up. And they laughed because I had some of the same teachers from 1st grade to 12th grade. And they're like, how did that happen? And I was like, well, teachers are dedicated. They want to be there. They have students that they see, and I see the joy on your face and your face when students you had in 2nd and 3rd grade come up to you and you're hugging them at graduation. That type of dedication. So we have to do things to encourage that, foster that. But we have to offer them something. I know we don't have the money, but there's got to be other things we can do, other incentives.
And that's what we've been talking about in regards to the culture and the climate of our district. There's a lot of things that people want. Everybody wants money, but there's a lot of other things that people also want.
Yes.
That respect, that feeling valued, that feeling appreciated. Hey, I have a doctor's appointment. Can I leave 5 minutes early? Yes, of course, I'll cover your class. Go. Those types of things also. That work environment makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So.
And I think buy-in. I've always maintained that we need to engage our teachers in the decision-making process because that gives buy-in to what we're doing. And that's a team approach across the district. And I feel like that is where there's opportunity to truly sit down and garner teacher input, our staff input about what they can do to make an impact in this district.
And I think that ESAC committee
Yeah.
answers that
Right,
question.
he's stealing all my lines. So, talking about buy-in, we've done several activities with staff about, in regards to suggestions. So we're going to do this activity ourselves. together. So I'd like if we, oh, yes, sir. Sorry.
Are we looking at all of our schools as far as having enough attendance, have enough kids there? Good thing is, Get Friends, Coronado, are they up full staff?
They're fully staffed.
At
yes.
school, and students now.
Oh, could they use more enrollment? Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Could we combine the two of them and still get away with it?
Yes, but that's the activity, okay? So that's the activity we're gonna do. We're getting ahead. Yeah, okay.
We're getting ahead.
Yeah.
We're getting ahead.
No, we can talk now. I mean, if you're gonna bring it up, great, I'll talk about it then.
Okay.
But it is something we need to look at. We need to look at Jeff again this year.
Yes. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna number ourselves from 1 to 3. And senior staff is also gonna participate, and we're looking for your ideas. After that, I will share with you the ideas that I have gotten from various groups. My ESAC group is composed of no administrators. You're either a teacher or a paraprofessional. So it's not just administrative ideas. So when you're meeting with your group, you'll have 10 minutes. And that is when you can help us come up with some ideas. So that's where you're going to be, Mr. LaFoyle, putting your ideas. So you'll start with 1.
Okay, I'm one.
You're 2, I'm 2.
I'm 3.
1.
2.
3.
1,
2.
So if all the 1s can meet here, around here, and then all the 2s, and then all the 3s. Ms. Lafreniere has played.
Oh, okay.
Renee
doesn't have to play.
She did play the game, and so did Miss Nava. They played the game already, yes.
All right, Ms. Nava's not playing either.
Yeah.
Okay.
the 1's over.
So
Yeah.
3s.
3s.
Oh, 3's over there.
3's over there.
And 2.
All right, where are your 2s at?
2s are over
Right
there.
here.
Okay.
And don't forget to talk with me about the boys.
We're just
I won't forget, I promise. We won't let me forget.
The 3s? Yes. Deborah, what are you?
I'm headed
Okay,
over.
then sit
I'm-
right
Are
here.
you 2 as well?
I thought I was a 1.
I don't know what you
Eight,
are.
you're a
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, you are a 1.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, 'cause Suzanne
I'm
was
a
a
1.
3.
Yeah,
You're a
yeah.
1.
What number are you, Renee? 1?
I'm a 3.
Okay.
You are doing 3s, all of you?
Yes, sir.
2s, there we go.
Okay, I'm going over to the
Ms.
1.
Robinson, you're a 3. Okay. Here's Suzanne, and I'll grab this chair. You'd rather?
Okay, I'm set. Yes, she's getting the chart paper.
Oh, okay. It should be Suzanne, because she has the best handwriting. Yes. She's got that good teacher handwriting.
Okay, I'm gonna set the timer for 10 minutes. They're coming, they're coming. Cool, you're just talking like, you're just talking. It's gonna be 10.
10 minutes, when are you starting?
Start.
Now. You don't need 2 athletic.
There you go, there you go. I didn't even know you knew how to do that.
I gotta go. I'll wear it.
Okay, so we need each group to share out. So, well, since all that group is together right there, since your group is together, who's the spokesperson for your group?
Ms. Canoyer is.
Okay. Okay, let's give Ms. Canoyer our attention.
So the first thing we talked about was having 2 athletic directors. Could we consider possibly 1 athletic director and maybe an assistant? Someone like that. We looked at the RTI facilitators at elementary schools. Is that the best use? And that varies by the elementary school as to how those people are utilized. But could we do better by having them be someone who actually works with students rather than just overseeing the data?
Yep.
The elementary academic facilitators. I know that those are funded out of. I know that the elementary academic facilitators are funded out of title and comp ed money, but could we eliminate that position? Is there data to show that those truly have proven to be something that's valuable? Cooling during the summer by the work area. We discussed this last year, so making sure that we don't ever want our custodians to be in danger for their health. But could we cool the school by the area that the custodians are working in and leaving the other areas a whole lot warmer?
Excuse me, Ms. Canoyer.
Yes.
Look, I just want to interject. We thought, when we were talking about
Mhm.
this, we thought we had solved that problem in the last budget cycle. Because we remember
Yeah.
talking about it. And I thought as a board that we decided that what we were instructing the staff was to cut back on the cooling. They would come in earlier in the summer months so that by the time the hottest part of the day, they would be done. And so we thought that we had already, put that in place, but apparently not.
Well, what she talked about was I was the one that instigated this. What we talked about was what she just said. They would be working in this section here would be cooled, and they can do that, can't they? So that's what I thought they were doing. But I guess we weren't.
So that's something for sure that we want to look at again. Looking at flexible scheduling during the summer, do we have to have all employees working certain buildings so that perhaps we can adjust the cooling in those buildings as well? Transportation for JECA, I thought that we agreed last year, and I'm told it wasn't so, that we weren't going to go to the neighborhoods, that the students were going to go to their high school and be transported from the high school to JECA. So that's something, but that didn't happen. So one of the things that we're going to have to do as a board is we're going to have to stand firm with those parents who want the buses to come in the neighborhood. And if we get those complaints, we have to talk to them about finances and funding, and that we just simply don't have the money to do it the same way. Dr. Fields talked about providing crossing guards at certain areas now rather than having to bus students across some of those busier intersections. So Escondido, Masters, and Metzger, we could provide a crossing guard and save a lot of money so that students can walk across Benz-Engelman Road rather than be bused.
Well, the city will pay for it. The city of San Antonio pays for the crossing guards.
It'd be less expensive for us to pay for it at this point, to have a person posted out there than to continue to roll buses back and forth across the street, so.
Great ideas from that group. Great ideas.
Who's next?
Who's the spokesperson for that other group?
Okay.
Anybody. It could be anybody.
And one more thing I forgot. Ms. Nava reminded me that what we were talking about is our stakeholders, is our community. They are the ones that we go to when we are asking them to pass a bond. In order for us to get them buy into what we need to do to tighten our belts. I think we need to be more innovative and creative about bringing them together in our setting. They have kids that go to school every day, but these type of intricacies, they don't know about. They don't understand. And I like how Mr. Atkins started off by saying, here's your household. Let's just take your average household. They will understand that vernacular. They'll get that. But we need to have the forum where we can get them here. Or we go to them.
Sure.
We got to go to them because they're not going to come here. They're not all watching YouTube. They don't know what we're talking about. So maybe we need to go to them. And that one particular forum that Mr. Macias had with HOA, that's a way of getting us going to them and letting them know, here's how we need to tighten the belt.
When I first got on the board, we used to call it a floating board. We used to go to the schools. One school this month, another school another month, and so on down the line.
That's not a bad idea, Mr. LaFoyle. Okay, who's next?
Mr. Macias, you can do that group, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Well, our group, we met, and one of the ideas that was put out there was school consolidation. It's not a popular idea, but in the vein of looking for efficiency, we're looking at low enrollment campuses and ensuring that each campus is at a certain enrollment to kind of validate the expenditures at the facility. So having to look at that to see if that's even an option. The JECA transportation, we understand that we're picking up students at JECA at their doors, and so I think it was mentioned there's a model of having them potentially go to a middle school or an elementary school for pickup that would alleviate some costs on the transportation side. Infrastructure funding, that was one where we would examine when we use local dollars for buses and for equipment on campuses, anything that can be purchased with bond dollars, use it as a future bond expenditure rather than local. And that's something that if we evaluate and we know the lifetime of a facility or a product, we can schedule a bond to incorporate that. And I know that from buses, we were spending about 1.2 million out of local funds, or maybe 300,000 over 4 years for them. So can we buy a bunch of them at one time using bond money? And then, of course, explore going out for that bond. There are no tax increase bonds that could finance infrastructure, which we think could help alleviate local fund expenditures. And then evaluate programs, cost per pupil, looking at our programs to figure out, for our perspective, which programs are most expensive in terms of then evaluating, is it something that we need to reevaluate in doing something different, maybe doing an internal instead of buying or getting external companies to do the work. But the cost per pupil will give us an idea of what we're spending. And so we thought that would be good. And then, of course, continuing our internal audits for efficiency. They're not just financial efficiency, they're efficiency on operations. So if we can identify those departments as we start looking at the cost per pupil stuff, then we'll say, hey, why don't we look a little bit deeper to figure out what we can do and where there's inefficiency. Is it salaries that makes it higher? Is it, I mean, what is it? So once we do that legwork, we can determine where we might be able to find some savings. So it was a good discussion.
Thank you, group, thank you. Okay, the next group.
Hello. We were group one. So one of the ideas that came up was making ourselves an open enrollment district. So that gets more kids in seats. And this was my idea, so if anybody hates it, like you can, I said we could charge an extra $1 for athletic tickets, events, and get a little bit more revenue there. And going after really large grants, there's federal grants, there are things that are out there that we can be going after, and SAISD does it. Moving some elementary schools that are under-enrolled to K-6 to alleviate some overcrowding at some of the bigger middle schools and create like a better experience for some of the younger middle school students. And that might necessitate redrawing some of the elementary boundary lines to even that out. Or consolidate. We talked about Coronado Village becoming a 6th grade campus for Kitty Hawk and redistributing some of the kiddos who are there. And then looking back at the partnership with Pre-K for SA, kids who do enroll in Pre-K for SA, if we're a partner district for them, we get ADA money if they live within the Judson boundary. I don't know how much money that might help us with, but it's something to look into. And then spending money on advertising and marketing can have returns on getting more kids to choose Judson over IDEA and the multiple charter schools. Those were our ideas.
Can I just say that, Dr. Ball, you brought it to our attention. I feel good with the board meeting or just us getting together about us selling ourselves.
Yes.
And when you were talking about, when you were discussing the play.
Yes.
You know, and it's a shame, and I feel kind of bad because I hear from other people, oh man, we were at Judson's theater, and those kids were awesome, you know, and they're like, well, did you go? And I'm like, you know, and so we've got to start selling ourselves and maybe come up with a way that,
Get the good stuff out.
right, you know, because like during basketball, when they take a break or whatever, maybe have whatever play is going on, have the kids come in and do a little snippet of that as a way to advertise that play during a game. You know, because I know doing football, we got a whole lot that happens, that's all covered. But maybe basketball, being that it's inside, would be a good way to maybe just let them do a couple of lines from whatever play they're doing, or the choir, if they have a concert coming in.
Great idea, and
know.
taking them around to the elementary campuses.
Yes, you know, give the middle kids
Yes.
something to look forward to.
I like
and,
that.
And a big one that, and I know this might sound crazy, but
I like
I
that.
still remember the butter cookies from my school.
The butter cookies?
The butter cookies.
Okay.
The food has to be good in the cafeteria. Kids, no, but you know when kids don't eat it, it's a waste anyway.
Right.
So whatever we can do to make them be going home going, oh, guess what I had for lunch today? You know, if you can excite a kid's belly, you can get conversation going on in that house with the parents about what we need as a district for help.
Because I remember the enchiladas. I mean, they had, yes, got good enchiladas, yes.
And if you ask any kid, they'll tell you what day of the week something is pizza. You know, it's pizza day. Everybody's there eating.
So what I'm passing around to you right now is the results. So we did the same exercise, and I got an extra one, so if anybody doesn't get one, I have some more. So we did the exact same exercise with several different groups of individuals. And then what we do is, just like this, we take the paper and we put it all together, and we're keeping our running list. Because through these activities, we've come up with some great ideas. And it isn't like we senior staff, but the entire group has come up with some great ideas that we're looking into. And they're ideas both in regards to budget cutting and ideas also to increase our enrollment, because we know that that would help us with an increase of revenue. So lots of good ideas. So I wanted to share that with you, so you have this information. So wanted to talk about the increase of attendance. You know, that is, so I'm on a little page that talks about that. That is one of the things that will help our district. One of the things that we are going to be doing next year is having the all-day pre-K. And having the all-day pre-K, we really feel that that's going to help our attendance. Right now, in half a day, it's hard for parents to do half a day. You either have to not be working or have a flexible job to be able to allow that. In the future slides, you're going to hear about the possibility about doing the TRE, the tax ratification election, which there is a way to do it, which is a swap that we'll talk about more, where it is not an increase to the homeowner's budget. And of course, the biggest thing is we're hoping for a miracle from the legislators. They're in session, and anything could help us. Even if they would fund all-day pre-K, that would be great. So really, we would love for them to also give us some of that lottery money that was supposed to come our way. So hopefully we'll see that.
A question on all-day pre-K. Are we expanding the number of pre-K seats we're offering as well?
Yes.
Or- okay.
Yes. So what we are going to be doing in April is having registration in Roundup. So
Okay.
we can go ahead and see how many, and then have the parents know that we're doing this. We're really gonna blitz it out and market it, because hopefully then they'll enter and stay with us through the long haul, instead of going to a place that does offer the full day. So we know that.
And we know that works. I mean, that's been proven.
Yes.
That when you have kinder roundup,
Mhm.
it works.
Right.
So pre-K roundup, Rebecca?
Every one of these people live in a subdivision or an area that has an HMO.
Mhm.
Go there.
Yes.
I just took over and got on the board of my HMO.
And one of the things that I personally want to offer is, if you ever want me to go, I know that Mr. Macias invited me to his homeowners association meeting, and I went. So I'm open to go to any of yours. Just let me know. I'll put it on my calendar, and I could just give a little bleep about, you know, the district and talk about it. So any organization, that I would be more than happy to do that.
And just to iterate, there were 11 HOAs there when we met, and so it's spread across District 4. And so they really appreciated the engagement and the opportunity to talk about Judson and its impact. And lo and behold, a lot of HOAs, true to form, have a vested interest in our district.
Sure.
They've had kids, or they have kids, or they're going to have kids, or, I mean, it's just, it's
They're paying
important.
taxes.
Yeah.
Whether they got kids or not, they're paying taxes.
And so even in that case, even if they don't, they're retired teachers. I mean, there just seems to be some connection to our district. So it was a great meeting, and they really appreciated Dr. Paul giving perspective. And so I would encourage, if
We
you're
need
able to do
more
that.
of that.
Yeah,
We really do.
If you could do
Just let
that.
me know and I'll go.
Okay, was that the northeast one? You said it was 11 in different ones.
It was 11, it was just District 4. It was
Oh,
every
okay.
HOA lead in District 4 that came to the meeting.
So some of the things that we can change, you know, this whole spring, we're looking at and talking about the budget. So the way we will plan to do is, we will have budget meetings with every department, and then also with every campus principal. So we know that not only because of the salaries, but the budget. We'll have to look at every budget very closely and ask for about, if possible, a 10% reduction from each one of the individual's budgets. The other thing is looking at staff and seeing which staff could we pay out of categorical. We want to maximize those categorical dollars to the fullest extent. Just like you guys suggested, you know, the possibility of closing and consolidating some campuses is something that we could change. And then having a basic school model that we truly follow. One of the things that you probably will recall is Gibson mentioned several times in regards to not having fair and equitable ways of doing things. And if we have a basic model, if that model is going to be very important that we follow it and we stick to that model.
Dr. Ball?
Yes.
When you talk about a basic school model, my only concern is, and I call it the F word, fair. Fair
Yes.
is not always equal. And so making sure that we give equitable staffing to areas where students have higher needs. So just because a school is on the south end of the district does not mean that they should be funded and staffed in the same way as a school in a more affluent area of the district. And so that's always my concern, is are we providing what the students need? And can we then justify and explain to the rest of the district why we're doing it that way? So that really requires looking at our data and looking at the free reduced lunch rates,
Yes.
looking at the at-risk indicators and all of that.
I agree with you. So what we would like to do, and what eventually the end process, what I would like for the board to approve, is that we have a basic school model, and our basic school model is just out of local, okay, just local. Then our categorical funds is exactly what you said, addresses those heavy needs that some of the campuses have. So if you go on to the next page, you will.
If I
Oh,
could
sure.
stop you,
Yes.
I just wanted to go back to the pre-K. I do see obvious advantages to doing a full-day pre-K.
Did you say disadvantages?
No, advantages.
Oh, advantages.
I see
Okay.
advantages. I do see some concerns, though, and so the question is, we would anticipate increased enrollment as a result
Yes.
of this, and I
Yes.
think this is good. I would just say in anything that we do, there should be a 3-year evaluation, because if we're losing money, or it's not, what I guess I would like to think is, what's the goal in the next 3 years based on this program? And then when we get to that 3-year mark, we evaluate, did this work, or do we need to change gears? Because there's expectations why we do this.
Right.
And the shortcoming that I've seen in the past is that we'll do something and we won't evaluate it. We'll just keep doing it, because that's just the way we've done it. So we need to set a hard line in 2 to 3 years. What does that look like, and have we achieved our targets that you had mentioned, why we need to do this strategic change? Once we do that, we can make a decision in 3 years to continue the program or discontinue what we're doing. But based on the fact that we increase enrollment, I'm assuming then we're going to increase revenue. And so if that's the case, is the program paying for itself, or where is the money coming to now offer a full pre-K where we didn't do that before? So that's, I guess I'm not understanding what that looks like right now.
Okay, so before we go into this, we'll answer this question, and the funding is going to come from some of our categorical funds that we'll use differently.
State ed, title?
Correct.
Title.
Title.
So, and this is where the concern part is.
Okay.
We're trading, so we're going to lose something we're probably doing. I don't know what we're doing in that, and it might be even a better idea. I'd like to know what we're giving up to have this, because whatever we're giving up, what are we doing, or what has it done, and why did we decide that this was more important than whatever we were doing with title money? Because obviously, whatever it is, if it's the RTIs, because that's something that we've talked about in the past, if we're going to eliminate RTIs from title, what are we doing then to help those kids that need that support? And I'm certain you have some answers, but that's sort of where I'm at right now. That's why I just need that information.
Sure. And we can definitely provide you more concrete information, but right now I can share with you some of the things that we've been discussing and talking about. One of the things that came out in that document is teachers saying, I don't need more stuff. I don't need more stuff, supplies and things like that. I need more time with children. I need more time. When I only have them half a day, I don't have enough time. So that's one of the things that I've heard from teachers, and that's why we wanted to do the pilot program, is to be able to hear from teachers. So at the end of this year, even though it's only been a very small time that we've had it, we're going to survey those teachers, look at those students, compare them to students that only were and had half a day program, and it'll start to give us a glimpse of information. But it's like you said, it'll take 3 to 4 years to really see, are we being more successful with them staying all day than just a half a day program?
I can't see offering them more time to be educated always.
Right.
I can't see it.
And that's why those benchmarks, you establish them, that quantifies what her expectations are, what mine would be, what yours would be, and then in 3 years, what does that look like? What did you expect to garner out of this? If it's increased enrollment, then we should see that, not a decrease. Better test scores, we should
Reading
see,
levels?
We should see all of that. And if we're not, then there's a problem.
Right.
And so that's sort of what I would imagine.
Right. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to go to the basic school model. Okay, so you'll see the basic school model there. So, Bill, do you want to start this?
Sure. And so, like I said, what we did is we actually, and you can see I have some notes there, and we've color-coded some things because these just aren't our recommendations. Some of these came from the Gibson report. Some of these came from our district leadership exercise that we did, and then some of them came from a teacher committee that was put together to make a recommendation. And so basically, when we're looking at a basic school model, we're wanting to more equitably staff the campuses. And we also use this as a basis. When we use categorical funds on a campus, we first have to prove that we equitably staff our campuses. After we've done that, then we can use categorical funds on a campus and supplement that for a needs-based. And so that's the two reasons to have one. And so what we've done is go through and look at all of the locally funded, again, these are only locally funded positions in the district. And by the size of a campus, assign an FTE to that. In the right-hand column, you will see potential savings in those areas. And then you'll see a percentage out at the far right And that's kind of the percentage of the teacher reductions in that area. And the reason we did that is because elementary is so large, it looks like elementary is getting a bigger share of the cuts than secondary. But you'll see they're pretty close. They're not going to be exact. So again, every campus has a principal. We are talking about our smaller campuses having half a principal, and so 2 campuses teaming up and sharing that vice principal
And remember, again, this is the part where I said by attrition.
through attrition.
So no one would lose their job right now. It wouldn't happen until if and when somebody left, so it would be through attrition.
How many elementary schools do we have of that 250 to 400?
6. They would also share a counselor. We would provide a dyslexia, again, they would share dyslexia, but this would be across the board.
Have we looked at the numbers of students that we're servicing in terms of dyslexia? Is that going to work? Because I know that, you know, our numbers of students that we've identified have increased.
Yes, ma'am.
And my experience as an elementary teacher is that our dyslexia teachers were busy all day.
There are ways that we can definitely make it work. As campus needs change, we might, have to adjust, but we would certainly make sure that the students' needs were met. Right now, a lot of the kids are being served now through the special ed program instead of dyslexia. A lot of them have qualified.
That's our identification issues then.
It does open up another can.
GT teachers, the GT committee met, I think it was 10 teachers, and met with Dr. Cantu and came up with a recommendation to provide 1 GT teacher for each middle school feeder pattern, except for Kitty Hawk, because they were so large, they would have 2.
And I think everybody knows that Dr. Cantu had a death in the family, and she had a presentation that she wanted to share, but I told her that it was perfectly okay for her to go and be with her family, so she's in the valley. But she did a lot of work with meeting with the GT teachers and developing a plan where the kids could still, their needs could be met. And of course, it's not doing away with the program. It is different. And remember, doesn't have to be forever like this. It could be something that we try, see if it works out. If it doesn't, then we look at that data and then bring things back. So these are just recommendations. These are just recommendations.
I think if you try it, and everybody walks on you, you're gonna get them back.
If the teachers walk,
Teachers, librarians, anybody, there's 1 to 5, 1 librarian for every 5 schools.
okay, so.
Every librarian I've talked to says,
So what would happen would be is the librarian, the certified librarian would be working with 5 other individuals that would be at that campus full time, and they would be the resource to those 5 individuals.
are you gonna train them to become librarians?
What we're training them to do is to do the job and to meet the goals of the Texas library standards.
Good luck.
Okay, so,
This would be through attrition that we would go to that. It's not, nobody's being.
Even nurses, look at the nurse, you got 1 nurse for 5 schools.
Every camp.
These poor nurses be running all day.
That's a registered nurse.
But there's a,
But there is there's an LVN at every campus.
That's not saving anything, no?
No, it is. It is saving if you have a.
An LVN makes how much?
Well, but if I'd have to guess about
32,000.
32?
How much?
32,000.
32,000. Registered nurse makes how much?
52, is it?
Approximately 50.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Teacher pay.
we don't have one at every campus now, an LVN, do we?
We have registered nurses.
They have registered nurses, everyone.
Yes, sir.
So, you aren't gonna save much.
through attrition,
It would be
through
on-
attrition.
Right.
Dr.
Through
Well,
attrition.
attrition allowed to come in 1 year.
No, so the cost savings that we have down at the bottom line here, it isn't in 1 year. None of this we are projecting that would happen in 1 year. This is over a span of at least 3 years, maybe even longer. So,
Well, I say good luck.
go
I
ahead.
don't know how many people are out there with a pulse at school.
With a
At
what?
my schools, I go to my school at least once a week every school.
Right, right,
And they've been talking about this,
yes.
and I never had one say, I'll stay. Didn't ISD try this formula?
Northside, or, I don't know. if-
Independent school district over in San Antonio.
Oh,
I think they tried this. I checked up on it. I don't think they're doing it anymore.
I do know of some school districts that are doing this, and it is working quite well. An LVN is allowed to do quite a bit. Sometimes it is the LVN that's doing the tube feedings,
Given medicine.
Yes,
Yeah.
all those things. So I do believe that with the support of those RNs, those LVNs will be fine at the campus.
So if something major happens, are you gonna call 911 or are you gonna call?
That's what we do
a
right-
Registered nurse to come back?
That's what we do right now. Even the registered nurses
Yeah.
call 911. And I think y'all know, we call quite a bit.
Yes,
You
we
get
get the messages
We always get
all
the
day
emails.
long. Yes, we know.
We always get
Thank
the
you, Ms.
emails.
Betty.
I don't know if, I'm gonna have to look into this.
Keeps
more.
us informed.
And so we'll evaluate the schools that have some of the units that house medically fragile children to be sure that we have maybe an assistant, another aide or something there.
Right, and also keep in mind that if there's a special ed need, there's usually a special ed need nurse that's
Yes,
there
yes.
to help with those. So we're not talking about any of those.
Now, can I just state that what I said in our smaller group when we were talking, is that my concern always is that the very first thing we look at when we start looking at cuts are the ones that affect elementary schools. And I just want us to be careful of perception, because we just talked about putting in an innovative schedule where our high schools are going to have more planning time and fewer students.
Right.
And that is going to cause some concern with morale for our teachers at elementaries and middle schools. And so now we're saying, okay, we're doing this and they're going to be better, and now we're going to take this away from you. So I just want to be sure to advocate, and I will always advocate for our gifted and talented students at having an equitable distribution of teachers for them, because if we want them to be successful at the high school level, we have to start identifying and nurturing them at the elementary level. We lose a lot of students to drop out that are gifted and talented students, and some of that is perhaps because we're not doing a good job of developing their social and emotional learning at the elementary school, and having one teacher per 5 schools is certainly not going to help with that. So I always have concern. In many states, gifted and talented students have IEPs just like special ed students do, and they recognize and understand that they have specific needs there. So I am always going to be an advocate for
Yes,
that.
ma'am. Thank you. No, we appreciate that, because we don't want any group to be forgotten, and you, not you personally, but you.
Well, I was a
Yeah,
tag
right.
teacher, and so I understand,
Right,
you know,
because
at that level.
You will hear from individuals that we focus a lot on at-risk, or you focus the ones that can't, do, and how about my child that can, making sure that they're achieving. So absolutely, we don't want to lose any of that.
Everybody deserves a year's worth of growth.
Absolutely, or more. Yes.
Dr.
So,
Ball, I'd
uh-huh.
like for you to please go back to the one librarian for every 5 campuses and registered nurse for every 5.
Yes, so sorry.
Yeah, that's
Okay, so every campus, okay, let's take the the LVN first. So every campus would have an LVN there every day, full-time.
Right.
Okay, so for a group of 5 campuses, there would be a registered nurse that would be overseeing these campuses and would be working with the LVNs at each one of the campuses.
Where is their home base?
Yeah, it's okay.
They'll always be floating.
Right, they'll always be going, But go ahead, Dr. Fields, anything you'd like to share, yeah.
They don't have one, and in that way, even if there was a concern with paperwork or something, they're always free to flow to that particular campus without worry of what they're leaving or where they're coming from. And then Dr. Ball also added one oversight position for like the lead nurse to be able to go wherever she needs to go as well. And that's from high school downtown.
And that lead nurse, does the lead nurse have a base?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and then librarian?
Yes. So every campus would have a library aide, okay?
Okay, an aide.
An aide. And then there would be the the certified librarian that would be working with those 5 aides to make
Okay.
sure that they're trained, that they're doing everything that
And they too are floating and don't have a base?
Right, they could spend a day at each one of their sites, helping and supporting them. So what we started already looking at in anticipation that the board might approve this basic school model is looking at the training that we have to do for those aides, just like the training for LVNs, making sure that they understand, making sure that their libraries have library standards that they have to meet, making sure that we can train the aides in the library standards. This year, for example, there was one campus that could not find a certified librarian, and she had an aide, and the principal said that her aide was just as good as a librarian. Of course, it usually, for any position, it depends on that person's work ethic, that drive, that wanting to do a good aide. We all know that sometimes a certificate doesn't make you the best teacher.
Right.
Right. So it's about looking for that right person that wants to do the job. What Ms. Knoyer said, she hit the nail on the head because that's exactly what we had heard. So the number on the right that's really small on each one of the graphs, when you take them and you see elementary, middle, and high school, that's approximately the percent that they would be losing. So you can see that elementary is a little bit higher, it's 9.2, middle school is 7.3, and high school is 8.9. So,
Question,
Sure.
so in looking at the 3 different models, in middle school and high school, there's an average ratio, teacher to student ratio, and then in elementary school, it's shown as like, I interpreted that as like, we're gonna have 24 kids in every class in elementary school, which I know is not gonna like happen, but that's like gonna be your staffing ratio. I think that if this is gonna go out to teachers, like there should be some sort of average for elementary, because they're gonna look at this and be like, why do I have to have 24 kids in my class, and like at middle school and high school, they're gonna have 21. I know that's not what it's gonna be.
okay.
But I think, I don't know if there's a way to calculate that, where like the max is 24, that's the cap. And then on average, we're gonna hire for, we're gonna shoot for this staffing ratio.
Ms. Rodriguez, I just want to say that we did not change. This is the same staffing for elementary that was approved last year.
Oh, I absolutely
Yeah, we
understand
had
that.
to go with a lot of schools.
But you see how over
When
here,
it says teacher.
it's a
Yes,
cap
ma'am.
on the left.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
so I think just the messaging, I understand
Okay,
it,
okay.
but I think people could look at this.
But
and
that
say,
includes special areas that have classes that are very small.
Right.
Like you're not gonna have as many in a choir class as you would have in an
Or
English
you might
class.
actually have more.
Right, and
go
so
the other way.
that's gonna for sure take some.
Right, right.
Now, one of the things we tried to do is on the middle school and the high school is put the max class over on the side, because I think that was
That's
what
the
was approved
comparison.
last year, was the 28 and the
Right.
30. But when we look at the average, again, Ms. Knoyer is correct, it's some of those small classes, and you have coaches that don't teach a full day sometimes at the high school and at the middle school, and so that's why we have to kind of use an average to get to numbers that are realistic for them to function under.
I wonder if it's just a simple thing on the left, on the
Okay.
elementary one, of saying like, there's a class cap. of 24.
Okay, we can do that, sure.
And then people will see like, especially since they're gonna see that number of 9.2% and say that's higher than everybody else.
Right.
If I was currently a principal, the way I would approach this is I would really start to, not that they're not, but I would certainly work really hard to make sure all my people are happy, because if they all stay, then you're not gonna.
You don't have to lose anybody.
Right.
Nothing changes for you.
Right. Now, as a district, it hurts us because we're not saving, but, you know, at the same time, we can only make these types of changes if people leave. And somebody here had mentioned every district is going through this hard time. So other districts are not hiring a lot either. So you'll notice, we talked about the elementary one. You'll notice that there's the secondary one, and the ones that are in blue are the biggest changes. And then you'll see the high school. So I want to give you a few minutes to process that and ask us questions or thoughts. And then, as Mr. Atkins shared, he put some little color coding in regards to some recommendations that we went back and we looked at the Gibson report. So some of them have little asterisks by there, and
When are the teachers and everybody at school get this?
not until the board allows me to share this. I mean, like I said, I think I shared with the board, most everybody hears and talks about things, and, you know, I think it would be crazy for me to think that this is a secret.
Oh, okay, I guess that's all I wanted to know.
Yeah, yeah. I think everybody has some type of speculation. No one has really seen the model presented like this. Everybody has heard us speak of the model. Everybody has heard us talk about the budget deficit, but nobody has seen the model as you are seeing it right now. What is important to me is to work efficiently, and one of the things that we did this year is we approved the calendar early because I want us to be well prepared, whether it's for summer school, for planning in the summer, for new teacher orientation. So I on my calendar have reserved the last week of February for staffings. In order for me to meet my deadlines and my goals, I would need for the board to approve this at the next board meeting. But I am also certainly willing to do another budget workshop next Saturday or during the week, anything you would like, to hear your suggestions and ideas as to specifically the staffing model that you would like for me to look into.
Can we just have a count of how many schools fall in each of those areas? You told us that we had 6 that were the
Yes, ma'am.
elementary, 250 to 450.
Yeah, but what about the others?
Okay.
Do you have that
I
information?
don't off the
Okay.
top of my head, no, ma'am. But oh, you do?
have it?
Okay.
Okay.
451 to 700 is 10,
Okay.
sometimes 11, because one of the schools is a 698 to 72.
Okay.
Let's call it 10. And then 4, over 7.
And we don't have any that are 950?
And what about 951 to, okay.
Since we've opened more that,
Do we have any that have capacity for 950, 2,000?
Rolling Meadows had 900.
If forced, we could put portables there, just like Rolling Meadows was able to get to that standard if necessary. We could
None of the
get,
physical buildings.
but the
have
physical
that.
buildings are built for 700.
That just seems really large.
I was at Candlewood and we had over 1,200, just saying, before we opened, before we opened
That was
D-Lock.
back then, though.
They
Yeah.
were bigger than Kitty Hawk. And then can you tell us on the middle
As
schools?
mentioned before, elementary, 250 to 450 are 6.
6.
Right. And how about the middle schools?
Middle schools?
Middle schools, we have only Kitty Hawk between the
Right.
1250 and 1499 range. We have Judson Middle, Metzger, and I think
Woodlake Hills?
no, ma'am, I think Woodlake's going to be 8 seats. So between 500 and 999 would be Kirby and Woodlake.
And then between 1,000 and 1,249 is Judson Middle
And Metzger.
and Metzger. Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
And then our high schools? And I know that'll change next year with
Yeah,
Well,
projections for veterans.
for veterans.
right, but we actually threw in some projections for veterans.
Okay.
And for Wortham Oaks. a little-
Okay.
a
Right,
little bit.
okay, and so what do we think where our high schools will be?
High school, Judson will be right over at the 2499 threshold. They should be about 2550 to 2600.
So they're the high
Yes, ma'am.
group?
And then Wagner will also be right above 2,000, so they'll be
They'll
at
be-
2,024 actually.
Okay.
And then veterans will be in 1,600,
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that.
And, I can, let me make sure on Willie Hills Mills, yes, Willie Hills Mills at 797.
And would JECA follow like the middle school ratio? So I'm assuming they have less than 1,400.
Jackie, yes, they have about 475-ish.
And they're kind of a different animal, so they don't
Yeah,
even
that's-
have a lot of
that's
the
why-
stuff that the other schools do.
Got it.
Yeah, J-CARE and JECA would
They
be
don't
totally,
follow.
and JLA would be
JLA,
totally
you won't follow.
staffed
Right,
kind of
right.
separately.
Have their own special, they're not considered a basic school model.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
Good point, good point. So there's two things today that I really need direction from the board that drives our planning. One being the basic school model, okay? And throughout this session, ask any more questions about it. The other one is in regards to the tax ratification election, okay? So Bill, would you speak a little bit about this?
Sure. TRE, right now, there's two types of them. And so what's required is by law, we cannot go above $1.04 unless the voters approve a tax ratification election. And so the traditional tax ratification election is truly increasing the tax rate. We would ask the voters to increase the tax rate, and it would be a true tax rate increase. Back in 2005, there was an Attorney General's opinion that allowed districts to do what they call a swap. And so you can increase, if the voters, again, approve the tax ratification election, you would increase your M&O rate and drop your INS rate so that there's no tax rate increase. But because of the way the funding formula works, the state provides more funding on the M&O side than it does on the INS formula. So you would generate additional revenue on the M&O side. And by doing that, we could net an additional $6 million on the M&O side. And so kind of on the bottom there, you could see our current tax rate's $1.04, M&O and our INS is 40, so we have a total tax rate of $1.44. If we were to go for a swap, we would raise our M&O to $1.17, and through resolution, the board would pass a resolution saying that if that were successful, then we would drop our INS to 27 cents, so we'd still end up with $1.44. Now, what, people get concerned, well, are we going to be able to make our bonded debt? What truly happens is it generates $18 million worth of total revenue, that swap. 12 of that would have to be put back on the INS side to be able to make our debt payment, and that would leave us 6 that we could use on the M&O side.
And Mr. Atkins, I'd just like to interrupt you right here and
Yes,
say,
ma'am.
Board, you remember Mr. Elizondo, we were talking about,
Yeah.
and I think it was Mr. Macias was asking, when does that time come where we swap the pennies? This is that time.
Yeah.
Good luck to us. Be very patient with the older people in the district.
I totally understand.
And when you say something's going up and something's going down, they get panic stricken.
But notice-
90% of them, they're frozen.
But notice, Richard,
Yeah, I know
nothing
what
changes,
it
it's
is now.
still at $1.44.
Yeah, but
It's still at
they're
$1.44.
looking at another one getting more money than this one, and they don't understand it.
Most of them don't pay taxes anyway.
Pardon me?
Well,
Most of
they're
them.
frozen.
If
No,
they're
they're all
It's never
frozen.
gonna change.
But when we put the bonds, now, first thing they come up there, I was working with the bonds at Park Village. First thing they come up there, how much are my taxes gonna go up? They are, read the bond, it says no tax increase. No, but if they gotta go up, but they're gonna get more money. No, they don't. And I think I spent 10 minutes with one guy trying to show him that they weren't gonna go up.
So,
And then they closed. Then they couldn't go up if they wanted to.
So we'd like to show you this video, okay? So we'd like to show you this video because if this is something that the board eventually gives us a go-ahead and that we want to do something, this is just one sample of many things that we would have to do because you are correct. We have to educate people. You're absolutely right. We have to correct them. So something like this is what I would like Y'all know I like videos, but don't worry, it's not a cartoon of me, so y'all don't have to worry, okay?
Although that was a good little cartoon
I
though.
thought that was adorable.
Oh, that cartoon one worked good today.
The Floresville ISD Board. Floresville ISD Board of Trustees has called a tax ratification election, or TRE, set for August 25th. This short video will explain what a TRE is and demonstrate its effect on Floresville ISD.
Terms, but we probably, still have to do a lot of explaining to some individuals. But that's, one of the things that we could certainly consider, and having that swap would gain $6 million for us, and that is, as you know, something that we could certainly use.
That's good. Something like that would kind of help.
Yeah,
There, you'll still have the person there that, what do you need?
Right.
You can't do that.
Absolutely. So,
When would we be looking at maybe?
we would probably be looking at about an August timeframe.
So that would be a special election that we would hold?
Yes.
And I know that with some, my understanding was that with some of these tax ratification elections, you had to have a certain percentage of the district voting. Is that not true, or?
That was a proposal last legislative session. It will probably come back up this
Okay.
legislative session, but it did not pass.
Okay.
So right now, it's just one vote.
Whoever
You
comes
could
and
make-
votes is who decides it?
Yes, ma'am.
And you don't have to have a minimum number of votes?
No, ma'am.
So at this time, we'd like to really open it up for the board to give us some direction with two specific things that we've talked about, being the basic school model and the TRE. Then, of course, deciding if you would like another board workshop before the February 25th, or if you want me to move slower and not have staffings, but I think it would be detrimental to us. I think that we need to continue to move fast because there's a lot to get done, and I want us to be efficient in our planning and our staffing. And then also to help people realize it's not as bad as they think. All of this is through attrition. So don't leave us. No, we're not firing you. That's the worst thing that people are thinking right now. And that, as you saw, there's no RIF mentioned here. That is not where we want to be.
The first question that will come out is, what do we need the $6 million for? What do we, I mean, obviously, we can state the state is kind of our funding and things are tough, but those that pay attention are going to want to know what is $6 million going to. And to add on to that, we've talked a lot about utilizing our fund balance for those expenditures that are one-time expenditures, because we can't sustain that type of a increase to our budget, pulling $6 million annually. That's not what the fund balance is designed for. So this additional $6 million would do what? And so is that already spelled out in terms of what you are envisioning utilizing this $6 million? And this is a one-time $6 million, right? We're not.
Right.
We're not. So.
No, it would
It
be
would
every
be
year.
every year, then? So
Yes.
every year we would receive an additional $6 million.
Right, our revenue would
Okay.
increase every, I mean,
Okay.
it would
That's-
increase. We wouldn't get an additional $6 million every year, if that makes sense. It's not going to be like, I'm going to get 6 this year and then I get 12 next year. I'll just get the same 6.
Yeah.
Every year.
And I didn't realize that, so that's good.
Yes, sir.
So there is some, so what would we then do with that $6 million?
Has to offset the deficit.
Right
So
now,
it
it's
would,
just
it would
offset
go
the
to,
deficit.
Right.
because we just had this exercise about being more efficient, and so we haven't implemented any of these ideas yet to see what the outcome is. Because if we truly can save 1.2 million on buses every so many years, that adds up to a savings.
So a couple of things, if you
Sure.
don't mind. So once we get farther down the process of our budget process, and we see in regard to how much progress we make with the attrition part, yes, the $6 million mainly is to help us balance the budget as close to and not having to go into fund balance. But at the same time, giving something, if possible, to our employees. Because every year that we don't give a raise, every year we don't give a step, we just bring us further and further behind, and it'll be astronomical to try to catch up to the other school districts' pay scales. So all the things that mentioned here and the packet that we give you, all of those things will be looked at very carefully so we can implement some of those to decrease our debt and try, if possible, to have something for all our employees.
Well, I agree, and Ms. Eaton had mentioned it earlier too about those retention. I have questions here to still follow up on what we're doing to increase teacher retention. This schedule model, or this model, I mean, it's based on, when I looked at the ISDs at this last board meeting, their teacher experience in the classroom and the teacher experience within the district, which means there has to be initiatives to retain teachers in the classroom. That $6 million could be used for that. I would caution the salary increase, try to keep up with Northeast and Northside. We're just going to end up increasing. It's like a nuclear war. It's just going to keep going up and up. We're not going to be able to sustain that. So using that $6 million to find those programs or those incentives to retain teachers, I think, is a very strategic thing. But that's what I want to see. I want to be able to tell the community, this is what those funds will do to make us more competitive and make us more strategic in keeping teachers in the classroom, which is ultimately the bottom line, because that will lead to academic success.
That can be the second reason. I mean, because the main reason, the elephant in the room, is that we are in debt. We're short. And we already know that. The community knows that.
Well,
so we are being proactive as a district, and we're trying to come up with funds. If this is a way to help do it.
You and I both live in districts that have a high economically disadvantaged population. My district, I hear it. And so the main thing that I hear from HOA leaders, are you being efficient with our tax dollars? So we add more money to the pocket, they're going to wonder, what do you do? I mean, what's going on?
Mr. Macias, I think it's both things at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive. So we're trying to get this extra $6 million to have a deficit, and we're looking at how can we use our budget more strategically so we're getting the highest impact from the money that we have.
I would hope so.
We cannot sustain without, like otherwise we're going to have to make drastic cuts.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll have to have a rift.
I'll just be very candid. I'm actually in favor of this. I just want to make sure that we are using those funds and that we convey that to the community, that we're not just trying to, I mean, because I'm expecting to get more money this year from the state. I'm really crossing fingers, and I think our legislatures understand that there needs to be more money in education. I'm optimistic right now, but I mean.
We want you to be right.
Yeah, and the thing is, if they don't get it, eventually they will get it, because there's accountability. And so, as Ms. Knoyer said many a time, go vote. So there will be some accountability at some point. But I just want to make sure that we are looking at our cost per student on the program, that we're doing that, but that, and then we're utilizing any increased revenue, not merely to offset a budget, but to create academic excellence. And that's where the programming of retaining teachers, helping those that need social and emotional support, having innovative programs for prepping, SAT,
You're
everything.
making the list of reasons why.
Well, and that's what I want to hear. I want to hear Dr. Ball say. I want to say, these are the things I want to do.
We're not separate from Dr. Ball. We're the ones that's got to go out there and sell it.
The first thing you said, not to be argumentative, but the first thing you said, we're in the deficit. I don't want to just pay deficit. I want to put programs in play. I'll use fund balance money and bring it up and say, we need to do this for 3 years and see what happens, and if we move the needle. I don't want to just pay debt.
Well, I think that's going to be messaging. We're going to have to tell our people, these are the things we're doing to be more efficient. It is not enough. So we need this money in order to do, if we want to keep our personnel, if we want to continue with having, these services and these programs available, we've got to have some more money. We can't sit back and wait on the legislature to fully fund us, because it's not, they're never going to fully fund us, not with the current, and I'll probably get in hot water here, but the political climate in Texas is not one that values public education. Right. And so we have to help ourselves, and we need the public's help. If you want to live in an area that has good schools, you want Judson ISD to be where you want people to move and live, then you have to help us by allowing us to do this tax swap. Here's the part we've done. Here's how you help us.
And we'll help, because we want this as much as you do, is using these lists and having that information for you, so you can say, look, these are some of the things we changed. It's a shame that some of these things didn't happen, but it's my job to make sure it happens. The transportation things that you talked about, I have to make sure that those happen next year, because they should have happened. All those things that you mentioned, they have to happen. So we can arm you with that information to say, this is what we're doing to be very consciously frugal and efficient with our funds, but it isn't enough yet. I don't know if that helps.
No, it does. And again,
We don't have a rich uncle.
I'm just saying,
Or that tree in the backyard.
You know what I'm saying?
I just don't know that we can say that $6 million is going to go strictly to teacher pay raises, or it's going to go strictly to helping with the dual credit or anything like that, because our deficit is too big. We're predicting possibly $18 million deficit. And so you can't say, I'm going to take that $6 million and do you see what I'm saying? And so I think that what we can do is, we've cut all this so we don't have to cut these good things going on, and we need this money to help us continue with the good things going on.
And we don't want to say that and then, have people just saying, well, Judson is getting $6 million to pay their teachers. That wouldn't be a correct statement. So we want to be careful in how we do it. That's why we rely on the staff to say show us what they've done thus far. Hey, these are the things that we're concerned about. These are areas that we think we can help ourselves and help the district. And then now we've just chimed in, and I'm looking at the list, and a lot of what we just said up there, the employees
And
have
she
already
said that we were gonna see a lot of the same things.
You know, this makes sense. There's only one thing on here I'm concerned about, and that's the 4-day work week. I guess we're gonna adjust that address it because I'm concerned about that.
These aren't done deals, these are all.
No,
Yeah,
I
these
know,
are all
but
suggestions.
I can't believe that they would even want that, because
Well-
this is not a pay decrease for them.
No, they don't want the pay decrease, they just want to work 4 days.
No, we
Right.
can't do that.
And in our community, you know, we couldn't do that. I know it's done in other places, but I use the example of where I came from in regards to, there was a community that did that, but they were a wealthy
I
area.
was gonna say,
and-
they probably had more revenue coming in.
But no, they didn't need the childcare. The kids could stay home with their mom on Fridays, you know. Our parents work, and that's okay, and that's great, but we want a safe place for our kids. So I want to feed them, I want them here every day so I can feed them, you know, take care of them, so we need our kids here every day.
Our kids in my district stay home to take care of the kids.
Sometimes
What?
you're right,
And
that,
yes,
What?
the parents keep their child at home to take care of the little kids.
maybe they keep the
Mama
high school
goes to
kids.
work.
I thought, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
no, I heard what you said, but I didn't, but now I
Okay.
understand.
Yeah,
Okay.
Well,
they do that all the time.
Uh,
And that's why we have so many kids dancing.
I did want to add too that as we're thinking strategically, the other wishes that I have are really robust summer programs for our kids and after-school programs for our kids. And that's where I would see an increase in potential revenue, because as we brag about Choose Judson ISD, we want parents to feel that we are providing above
Top-notch.
education to quantify that. And so that, I just want to know that there is a strategy to this increase, and it's just, okay, we're offsetting. So anyway, we'll go through it. This is only our first budget. I mean, but if I had to put my opinion on the table, I think it makes, we have no reason why not, we should not move forward with the TRE. It's going to put us in a better position regardless of what we're doing. But I think in terms of informing our community, we do need to have a game plan of what that is. And it looks like you'll work towards that
Oh,
once we
absolutely.
give that sort of.
And so is that the general consensus of the board?
And this will be a voting item on the agenda in
Yes,
February.
I just want
but-
to know right now, just
Right.
informally, is that a general consensus?
Yes.
TRE?
Yes.
So, there you have an uninformed.
Thank you.
And I think it's going to be crucial to make sure that we have a consistent message, that all of
Right.
us
Yes.
are sharing, everybody.
Oh, yes, and we would
And
work on
I
that.
said at the finance meeting the other night to Mr. Atkins, it needs to be the same script.
Yes.
It needs to be the same script, whatever is going out there.
We need a good 5, maybe 10 bullets, you know, so
we
that,
do
because
that.
I go
Absolutely.
to all my churches and,
And
you
I
know,
would go
'cause
with you.
sometimes they're overlooked. Like
Yes.
when I campaign, I talked to a couple of my churches. I didn't go talk to nobody else. And you go in and you ask that pastor, hey, can I have 5 minutes? You know, in the Army, it's the KISS thing, you know.
Keep it
I'm
simple.
up, they see me, I'm down. Keep it simple, stupid.
I didn't know what KISS stood for.
You did.
No, I didn't. Now I know, okay.
I mean, we use some colorful words.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I'll kiss people who did get on the phone.
Yes, that's it right there.
Funny. You've gotten quite an education since you've been here. There was something else you said.
Oh, yes, let's keep going.
Okay, let's go. I'm not gonna say it, but you just learned it.
Can I ask a quick question? So if we did a tax ratification election in August, we would pass our budget with like our expected revenue without it, but then the revenue from the increased tax rate would already impact our revenues for FY 1920, or it would not come until the 2020-21?
Actually, we would have to pass a budget that required us to go up to $1.17.
I see.
So we would-
when we pass it in June,
And August.
July,
June.
Oh, for the board.
yeah.
We would pass it with the requirement, the additional revenue,
Okay.
right, in
That's
there.
what you're asking.
It's not a problem.
If we pass,
If
we
the-
have to go into fund balance to get money that we.
I would imagine so.
Correct.
Oh, okay. If it
Correct.
didn't
Yeah.
pass.
I imagine.
Unless we did cuts during the next year.
So it would be
somehow.
just like a $6 million windfall that we weren't, like not planning for, but I don't know. I guess my question was, we plan for best case scenario that it
Right.
passes. Okay.
Right. You have to have a budget that requires the tax rate increase.
Okay.
And then once we adopt that tax rate, that necessitates, we have to call an election
Okay.
at that point in
Do
time.
we create like a backup budget so that we're not like dipping into $6 million of fund balance?
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, the backup would be the cuts.
Right.
Right. And, but yeah, I mean, if it doesn't pass, it just makes 2021 that much harder.
Right, exactly.
I mean, we would get the money and the funding in 1920,
Yes.
because we would be setting our tax rate for the 1920 year.
And this doesn't impact future bonds for, like, if we were going to do an infrastructure improvement bond that would address the transportation and bus issues, would this impact that in any way, shape, or form?
No.
No, so we could still have a non-tax increase with.
Right, because you have a limit of 50 cents on the INS.
Yeah, okay.
So going back to the basic school model, if everybody remembers, our board meeting is a little different this time because our students are performing and presenting at Winter Governance, so some individuals are going. So our board meeting is on Tuesday, February the 19th.
Right.
So would anybody like to discuss this further before that, or do you feel comfortable discussing it then with a possible of approval for the basic school model? What would you like?
I'll just ask the question now. I mean, what is the expected performance, what's the outcome for this change? I know there's a financial, but I'm trying to get away from having to do things because we're strapped. I want to produce excellence, that's our tagline. So if this model will continue to give us a position to produce excellence, I'm all in. But if it's just gonna be the minimum, and what's your take, this basic skill, is it a model that's adopted in other districts, and are they seeing academic success?
That's where this comes from. So I could certainly speak, and I'll let senior staff speak too. This is a very similar model to many other school districts, and I'm not just referencing Uvalde and Southwest ISD, but this is a model that many school districts across the state are using because they are very similar situations. Honestly, our attendance is actually average. It is like other school districts. I'm not saying it's worse or better, it's average.
This is used by larger districts than us too. Is that what you're asking? This is used by districts that are larger than us as well.
Yeah, larger, or most of them just smaller.
No, they're on different sides. There's some small ones, some medium ones, and some larger ones. Bill, do you want to speak on your experience of basic school models?
Yeah, I think, like I said, I've worked in 2 other systems, and we developed this at Southwest. We developed this at Southwest, and I've used it at 2 other systems, and we were able to, again, we always did it through attrition, but we were able to continue to provide the services and the students be successful. A lot of that just comes with making sure that, again, I think you've brought up the efficiency of our programs, is making sure that those programs are run efficiently. And so sometimes it doesn't necessarily mean more staff, sometimes it means just doing something a little different.
And Bill, I don't mean to cut you off, but as all of y'all know, I have, contracted with Ms. Robinson because she's also has worked in many other districts. Give us some of your thoughts, Ms. Robinson.
And actually, that's one of the models that Eagle Pass uses. And so, in Eagle Pass, their finance director, the executive supervisor of finance, he has everything up on the website. So you can literally go through every single issue or staffing model that he has.
Yes, ma'am.
He creates a great budget manual, and he literally explains this is exactly what you're gonna have, and we have those tough conversations.
Could-
Eagle Pass does have LES. They do have the EP as well.
Could you talk about Eagle Pass's academic success, maybe their ratings in some of the campuses?
They're actually rated as a B district. They have a Blueberry school, they have 16 elementaries, and the elementaries are extremely successful. I want to say about half of them are in the 90s, they score in the 90s, or in the high 80s, extremely high 80s, which is, possibly the secret. There are two high schools, which is Eagle Pass High School, which is close to what Judson is, and Wagner and TC Wood are kind of close to the right. They were rated gold and silver according to the newsweek, the best 100 schools in the United States. And basically because they're just very proactive and very innovative and they try to deal with, okay, here's our situation, how can we deal with what we have? They're transparent about what ours is. They not the taxes. And it doesn't seem to be going away.
How many middle schools did you say they have?
They actually have 21 schools in Eagle Pass.
21 schools?
Yes, sir. And so they
16
have 16
elementaries, 2 high schools, how many middle schools?
They have 2 middle schools.
2 is all?
And they only do 7th to 8th grade in Eagle Pass.
Huh.
And so that's the model. They have 4 pre-K centers. And so they do the pre-K, and then they have their 16 elementaries, which is basically their first grade to 6th grade. And then they do 7th to 8th, and then they do the high school. And so, it's just, they're just successful with what they do. And the school is just, it's amazing, the sport of it. It's truly.
But I also think it's going to be a combination of a lot of things that you guys have said already. It's very easy to throw your hands up and say, well, gosh, now I need to work more, so my results aren't going to be as good. Anybody could use that as an excuse. So we have to make sure, though, that we're treating our people well, that we're also providing a good work environment for them, so we don't get into that rut of people saying, well, you know what, obviously they don't care about me or whatever, so now I'm not going to perform as well. So it's going to be making sure that we manage this correctly so we don't lose out on any success that our district has. Because whether we do this model or not, it's very easy to make excuses, but we can't allow that to happen.
Dr. Ball?
Yes.
Can I say something?
Yes.
I think we've done staffing models in the past. It's just that when we go through and then now we see 24-to-1 and there's an opportunity to save, that means that in some areas we didn't quite stick to that. And typically, sometimes they come to the board asking for assistance in more people in a particular area. But for this to be effective and to work, like Dr. Ball just said, we have to stick to the staffing model. And I understand when Ms. Canoyer says that certain areas require different staffing requirements, but we have to be cautious with that. Inconsistency breeds favoritism. So,
Right, and the other thing you just reminded me of, this is just local. So if we share this right now, a principal will probably look at it and say, oh my gosh, where did this, and this go? Remember, none of the categorical positions are on here. So there's still other positions that are going to be allotted to campuses to help with their needs, but those are going to be paid out of categorical funds.
I just have one more concern I want to express as I'm looking at this. In our elementaries, the 250 to 450, if we're looking at a part-time assistant principal and a part-time counselor, I have concerns about the testing burden that will fall at those campuses. One of the reasons we went with a full-time assistant principal was to help manage the testing difficulties that are there without overburdening the counselor with those, which created an inequity at those schools who didn't have a full-time counselor if the counselor was handling testing. And so I always have a concern about making sure that we're able to fulfill our legal duties, which testing is one of, and making sure then that the students, simply because they attend a smaller school, don't have services cut. So that's something to consider.
Is that something that's been thought about already? Let me ask C&I department. Is that something that's been thought about already?
Yes, there's an opportunity to shift responsibilities with counselors are focusing on academics, but they also have the opportunity to support testing as well. So those are things to consider.
Well, if they're only part-time, so they're not, I mean, we have two schools that are part-time that are sharing a counselor and sharing an assistant principal. So the concern is who's going to.
So when testing
Right,
time
when
comes.
testing time comes, then, but then the larger schools that aren't sharing, then they still have that counselor full-time who's not doing any testing duties. And those students are still able to continue getting counseling services. Do you see what I'm saying? So there's a built-in inequity there, which I was trying to alleviate with the push to make sure that we had an assistant principal at every school, because our assistant principals handle all the testing at elementaries.
We'll definitely, when we
So
meet on
something to-
Tuesday, we'll brainstorm.
Definitely, Dr. But one of the things is that you shift the testing. And so this counselor will be in charge of certain testing, this assistant principal will be in charge of.
Oh, I see. I see.
I know, but that doesn't alleviate the inequity between the bigger schools and the smaller schools who don't have to worry about shifting. They have somebody on staff to handle all of it, so that the counselor can then counsel.
Of the 6 schools that are in that category, how many do we have somebody with something that shows, like, how many of them are almost at the 450 and how many of them are they closer to the, like, are there any that are close to bumping up to that threshold? Or?
They're all in the 400 range, so.
Got it.
With the exception of Coronado.
Okay.
And Worthing.
And Worthing. The rest are 400, but have been consistent 400. Now, we do have
I'll give
some,
him this.
like Masters and Escondidos. Escondidos, that's reasonable to assume they'll cross that 450 threshold. Maybe even next year.
They need us to use the mic when we're talking because they're having trouble picking it up in there.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
What bothers me about this and the part-time people is our counselors don't have any extra time. Our school has a full-time counselor, and we need a full-time counselor because you know where a lot of our students come from. Low-income families and stuff like that over there. So these kids come in with problems right off the bat.
Could you remind me who the 6 are, though?
Yes, ma'am. It's Coronado Village, Wortham Oaks, Franz, Olympia, Escondido, and Masters. And again, it's pretty reasonable to assume that Escondido Masters will break that 450 threshold pretty soon.
Okay.
So it
So
would
could be
probably be
just
4.
four.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And this is good for us to look at it when we meet on Tuesday. The senior staff will be looking at those things on Tuesday to see how close we are and see if it's really, because I don't want to take something.
Disadvantaged kids at Park Village, I think is about 92%.
Right, but Park Village, they would still keep theirs, unless I'm looking at it wrong.
Yeah,
Because
They're in the bigger school
they're in the
category.
they're in the bigger category.
We still have both.
Yes.
They're in that 451 to 700 category.
So that means that when you look across,
Yeah, I'm looking at it now, 451, goes down to 0.
At-risk counselors that we pay out of SCD
Oh, that-
at some of the higher campuses.
That's right, some of them do have at-risk and social workers.
That was gonna be
Yeah.
my next point, was that we can supplement some of
Yes.
that, but I'm not seeing that necessarily at all of these 4 campuses, so.
Right.
Just something to consider, when we talk about, I've worked at large schools and I've worked at small schools, and there are advantages and disadvantages to both. At a small school, everybody does double duty because you don't have the extra classroom aides or campus aides to, so everybody has to work a little bit harder. You're on a whole bunch more committees because there's not as many people. You're doing a lot more. Everybody tutors after school because you can't just have half the grade level do it when your grade level's only 3 people. So it just,
Right.
making sure that we don't overburden somebody
Right, absolutely.
and that we do fulfill our duties that we're required to fulfill.
Yeah. So,
Have you
board
run these
comment?
by the principals yet?
No, sir, that's what I had shared, that I have not. I wanted you to have it first, even though people, talk. Yeah.
When I get home, my phone's gonna be ringing.
I'm sure it is.
To me, like, I see this as a decision-making model, right? Like, this is not, like, we're gonna cut things at campus
No.
Right.
that need it and
Right.
things like that. Like, we'll figure out the nuances of campuses,
Probably.
but like, going back to what Dr. Fields said, I think it was Dr. Fields, about like, oh, campus is coming and saying like, I need an extra assistant principal, and because we don't have the context of like each school and like the global view, like this is a model to help us make good decisions about staffing based on numbers, and then the nuance is captured in the positions that aren't here. Like we can add that through, whether that's through title funds or whatever, to staff in the high needs schools.
And that was one of the things that, Gibson came up with, is making sure that we had models and procedures in place, so we have something, solid, to go by.
Say this don't work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's a lot of problems. Are you
Okay.
gonna go back? Or are you just gonna try to ride it through?
Like, go back in the middle of the year, you mean?
Well, whenever it's necessary.
Yeah, we're constantly evaluating things. I don't see this not working because it's truly not that big of a change. So
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
You're putting a person that isn't certified in the library, that ain't a big change.
There's already people that are doing it right now that are being really successful. Plus, remember, this is through attrition. So it's not like anybody is being asked to leave or anything.
Well, I know that, but the thing is, if you take and say, okay, now, you're gonna have 5 schools you're gonna have to go to. That's gonna start immediately, right?
No, only through attrition. It's not gonna start immediately.
Well, it's gonna stay the same.
Right, that's why this savings is a long-term plan for savings. I can't tell you I'm gonna save $3 million.
Are you gonna present this to the teachers and everybody?
I'm not gonna share this until the board approves this.
So we'll have to have
Then
this
it's too
as,
late for them to say it.
well, this is just the beginning.
Ms. Roberts wants to say something.
I don't see nothing
I
wrong
totally
with
agree
it.
about the counselor, and so just one of the things that, and I was just sharing with Ceci right now, is that at Eagle Pass, one of the things that they do for cost savings is they actually split fund. So let's say we have those 4 campuses, right, that we want a full-time counselor. Okay, at those 4 campuses, then we do a split funding. So we go SCE half of the time and local half of the time. And I hear what you're saying, and so that's another way that it won't give us a full savings as we want, but it'll give us partial savings. And some savings is better than no savings.
Well, and sometimes we just have to bite the bullet and pay the money because that's what our students need. The other thing that hit my head is, and it may be something that's funded out of not local money, but we currently have technology aids at every elementary campus that reinforce the technology teaks so that the, am I loud enough?
Just use it anyways.
Yeah. So we currently have technology teaks that are taught through those classroom aids that are part of the rotation, and I see that we have PE and music on here. Is that something that's funded differently?
It's funded through the local
aids.
So
Okay.
what we would be doing based on the size, we're going to allow the campus to have that flexibility. I'm pretty sure they're gonna keep them there, but you would see, okay, they get 3 local aids, some get 4, some get 5. So they could still have them as part of the rotation.
I just want to make sure that that's something I think that should be handled consistently
Okay.
across the campuses.
So we could.
Because you can't have some teachers having to make sure that all their lessons include the technology teaks when we don't have the technology to do it, or we can have them rotate through a lab.
And I
So-
think all of them do right now. No? Okay, I'll look into that. Okay, I'll look into that.
Not to do it properly to meet the teaks.
Okay.
And I know as a board, we each, we vote our conscience, we vote, what we feel is good for the district, but I also don't feel that it's fair for us to ask the staff to look at our district and what we can do or what needs to be done to help us save ourselves, and then turn around and want to fight them on what they came up with to help us. Because I personally, I'm sitting here, I'm telling you, I have to go by what they tell me because I can read, I'm not stupid, but I'm not the one here doing the work every day. They know what needs to be done to help us keep this district moving forward. And I really don't want to go against them unless it's just a gross negligence of authority or whatever, you know, something that I see just going to take us down a rabbit hole. But, you know. No, I mean, but I'm looking at Mr. Foyle. He knows what I'm talking about. Because he's stuck on that library, and that's the one thing that's going to keep him from trying to be supportive of the district, but it's also going to set you up.
You put this together, right?
No,
Who
sir.
did?
I did with Mr. Atkins.
You and Mr. Atkins.
Right,
So
but-
it isn't the people of the district that put this out.
But with
It's
all of
too many.
senior staff's input, all of senior staff.
It's not a done deal, Mr. LaFoyle. They're talking with us about it now.
Yeah. And
You see what I'm saying?
Right, and
I
all the
understand what
input.
you're saying, but what you were saying, what I thought you were saying was that the people put this together.
The teachers also helped with this.
Oh, it was a teacher
This-
representative from
Yes,
every.
on this, they all participated.
That,
I'm sorry.
I'm not trying to change your mind. It's just that you're only stuck on the libraries. Don't ignore me. You're only stuck on the libraries.
Nurses, it's the nurses, the library, you put library aid in charge of something that,
Who's doing it right now, Mr. LaFoyle?
who's running it?
Yeah,
The library.
aid at most of the schools. All our schools don't have librarians.
Well, that's okay, but most of them do.
So the ones that don't have them, who's there?
They're all commissioned to have librarians, a certified librarian.
And the state is short on them, so where are we supposed to get them from?
Every school is supposed to have it. Well, they haven't been hiring them because we put a hire.
We don't even have them available. They're not applying. Have you not noticed that?
They're not applying. I don't know about that. We went through this before. Somebody told me that we had no librarians apply. Remember this? And I looked down there, I said, what about the 5 you turned down? Remember that? We had extra librarians and you didn't hire them? I remember very clearly.
right, remember, sometimes when people apply, there's things that don't make them a quality candidate. So just because somebody applies and has the certification, doesn't mean that they're the right person for the job.
Well, if they got certification, they should be right.
No, sir. There's a lot of other
Well, then
things.
again, go back to every librarian we got and make sure they're all the right person. I can name you a couple of names. If they aren't doing their job, they should be doing it with a librarian. And the reason I'm so heavy on librarians is because I went to a Catholic school, and that was the only place I could go and get away from religion. Just go in that library and check out these books and read them.
So what's stopping kids from going in there now, checking out a book and reading it? I don't
Right now, yes, they can.
We have to have a certified librarian for a child to check a book out? Is that
It's
what you're
not,
telling
they
me?
don't just check books out now.
No,
They're
I'm
using
asking
the
you
wrong
a
thing.
question.
They don't check just books. They do many, many things in the library. They read to the kids, they make sure the kids get the right books.
Yeah, we're not denying that, Mr. Well, I think like, there will still be a person on every campus.
Yeah, name.
But we're not replacing librarians. If the librarians want to stay, they can stay, and
You
then
watch
we'll be
them go.
fully certified.
I rest my case and that's it.
And the other
know
thing, I
I
just
vote.
want to reiterate,
I don't
Mr.
care.
LaFoyle, yes, you do care. Yeah, you do. That's why you're passionate, because you do care.
And I
You care about
appreciate
it.
It looks
But
like
the
this
thing,
is,
I want you to know that as a teacher, teachers have accountability and responsibility when they take their class to the library.
come to
They-
Park Village and watch.
well,
Take
then-
care of it all.
Okay, well then, those teachers are being allowed to get away with not doing what they ought to
Yeah,
do.
They get away with it, so. I just rest my case on it. I'll-
You're a
I'll vote
board
the way I
member,
want.
why are you not
Here.
fixing
Let's
that?
go here.
Isn't that your school?
Pardon me?
Isn't that your school? Why are you not fixing that? You're a board member.
Yeah?
You're entitled to talk to that person.
Oh, no. I did that once. I asked the teacher.
What happened?
Why aren't you taking care of your kids? Because they're in the library and the librarian's problem. And
And
I
you let the
caused
teacher tell
problems
you
with
that
it.
and stay on staff.
Oh, listen, Marcia Bellinger was was the principal there, and I got my butt chewed out by her.
Okay, so, what we'll do is senior staff is going to review this and we'll bring some more, ideas and suggestions. I think Mr.
I did have a comment or two that I wanted to add, I have one here. When Ms. Robinson talked about the Eagle Pass, and we just talked about it, so it's not like it's a secret or anything, but observing the fact that the teacher experience and retention rate was higher at those districts means that we just need to also keep a very innovative strategy in mind for doing that here at Judson
Yes,
ISD. That is part of the equation. And the thing with Judson is that we've chronically had,
Turnover.
yeah, it's just one of those unfortunate situations. We're a medium-sized district, and teachers will go to other districts. So if we're going to do this, I would like to see us be innovative. And we talk about what could we do, right? And we've been here. I mean, in my 9 years, we've addressed this issue. One of my favorite things to do that I thought would not be as impactful is to offer 2-year contracts to teachers. We do 2-year contracts to teachers. We're committing that we are satisfied with your work and we want you to stay in our district. That's innovative because not a lot of districts are doing 2 years. If we need to do something that differentiates us, we do something that's going to be innovative and differentiate. But that doesn't cost anything. It just commits us to a 2-year budget cycle. But we have to think of something that's going to change the game. Because the way it's going now, if we can't change the formula in which we're having that turnover, or if our teacher experience is not at that optimal level, like an Eagle Pass or United ISD, we may not get to that level of academic achievement. So if we're going to emulate that district in some capacity, it needs to also address teacher retention. So hopefully,
That's a good idea, and I've never heard you say that.
I've said it, I promise you in my 9 years, I have said it. But the thing is, if we can have something that's also, when you discuss with your leadership team, what about this viability?
And I think the other thing, because it came up in those documents that you had, is the number of times that teachers get evaluated. I think that would also be a great thing, that teachers would feel support. If I'm a good teacher, I don't have to have an evaluation every single year. So we will
Absolutely.
definitely look at those things and bring those recommendations. So those are great ideas. So on that note, I consider this successful because I think that there was a lot of great ideas that were shared today. So just want to give an opportunity, senior staff, any questions or anything that you need from this meeting you feel you didn't get, or?
Or you need us to know, especially you. Please educate me.
Yes.
I would just like to reiterate that Mr. Atkins put a dollar amount next to all of the basic school models. And
Keep the mic, Mr. Garcia.
Yeah, there's a dollar amount but in the basic school value and estimated long-term cost savings. And every time we don't do something, that's just, we don't chip away at the deficit by that value. So I just want to kind of remind us, and I look at the $18 million deficit and think, okay, every time we say no to something, that's just more cost savings that we're avoiding. So just wanted to.
So
But
I would just,
go ahead, ma'am.
I would just like to say, so Dr. Ball has asked the board to give her certain, at least a consensus, an informal consensus of how we want her to lead. So we have given her a general consensus on the TRE. Are we giving her the general majority consensus of the basic model? We are, the majority are.
I'm just thinking we're close to voting. I don't want to lead, but I just want to be careful. This is a budget meeting, and we're really not, so.
No, I know, I'm just talking about an informal general
I think it's a
consensus.
consensus to bring it to us.
Just
for
to
a vote.
bring, yeah.
I can.
When the time comes.
Yeah.
And then, lastly, she did ask if we needed to have another budget session in February. I say no. What do you guys say?
I know that there'll still be many more to come. I just needed to know if we needed one before February 25th.
What's on February 25th?
When I start my staffing I'm gonna stop this, I start the staffing meetings with that whole week. Every single principal gets
This is
set up.
gonna be on the February 19th board,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
For approval. We can adjourn.
Are we done? All right, well, this meeting is adjourned at 11:38. Thank you, everybody.